We're going to be talking about uh, Giambattista Tiepolo and Domenico, his son. Um, and the first thing that I want to say is the drawings in at the Morgan are um, really a very large collection. They have over 400, I believe, drawings by Giambattista and Domenico. Um, the For me, the drawings have a great deal of energy. They have a great presence. Um, he does an amazing amount with a a pen line and and a single tone wash for the most part. Um, and then comes back in and does a secondary wash after he blocks it in. Um, and you can see that in this example on the homepage here. Um, it really it's very they're very open drawings. Um, your eye really completes the picture, and that's one of the really interesting interactive parts about what these drawings do. Um, I've loved his work since basically back at college. I started to look at Tiepolo, and they're really wonderful abstract pieces. Also, um, his paintings and frescoes are much more polished than the drawings. But once you start to really appreciate what the drawings are about, you start to see how the frescoes really embody the inventiveness of his work. All right, so this exuberant posture features a god hovering directly over his earthbound viewers' heads. The visual interest, extreme foreshortening, is one of the hallmarks of Tiepolo's work. Many of his drawings included in this show were preparatory sketches for frescoes and murals in villas and palaces of his wealthy patrons. And here you see um, that drawing that was on the first page, and you see it on the left in the actual oil study. Now, this oil study is 39 by 25 inches. The actual mural, the fresco, is I believe something like 35 by 90 feet. Um, so you get the idea when you look at the picture down below. What happens is, basically he will do one of these full color studies, and then apply it to the fresco um, in in the site, and the colors change and the shapes change when it's site specifically painted. Um, but you get the idea. I mean, basically, he used these drawings almost like we would use photographs as reference material. He developed a great body of work. Now, this piece is from pretty early on in his career. He was born in. Oh well, let me do a little biography thing quickly. Um, Yeah, this piece was a study for a palazzo in Milan. Um, there are six um, planetary deities nestled in the clouds. The fresco was commissioned to adorn a palazzo to celebrate the union of two dynastic families. The finished fresco is radically different from the study. Okay, so let me do a little bio thing. He was born in 1696, died in 1770. Um, and let's see, born in Venice. He was the youngest of six children. Um, his father was his father was named Domenico. His father was a small shipping merchant, um, and his father actually died a year after uh, Giambattista was born. Um, his mother entrusted him to um, uh, Gregorio Lazzarini, who was a successful painter um, with a very eclectic style. Um, so he strongly influenced Tiepolo's development. Um, I don't know if you're familiar with the apprenticeship programs that they used to have in the ateliers of artists. You know, the this mural I mean the fresco that I'm showing right here would have been executed by a whole crew of people. So Tiepolo was not doing all of that work, and Lazzarini was not doing all of the work. So basically, that is how you learn the trade. Um, and basically, the atelier, you would join it, and 4 to 6 years as an apprentice. Okay, so he married a um, a fairly well-to-do woman who was actually she was a noblewoman. She was um, Maria Cecilia Guardi, and um, two of her um, uncles, actually, no, two of her brothers were both painters. Um, Francesco and Giovanni Guardi were both really wonderful painters. Um, so actually, Tiepolo was fairly successful right from the start. He actually, once he set up his his practice, he was doing fairly well, well connected. Okay, and here is a shot of the installation at the Morgan. Um, okay, there's basically they have more than 300 examples um, their works in their collection. Um, Tiepolo was a great draftsman. He really was. He had a real feel for form. And here we go. Like a related oil sketch nearby in the exhibit, this canvas does not correspond to a known commission. It's been suggested that it was a proposal for a ceiling in the sacristy of San Rocco, um, completed in 1748, but the sketch style is that of Giambattista's work in the following decade. It relates to the work of Domenico, who was also doing other commissions. So if you look at Domenico was Giambattista's son, and he and I believe his other son's name was Lorenzo. Giambattista had 6 children, and 2 of his sons were both painters. Domenico was, I believe, the more successful of the 2 sons. And if you look at the drawing on the far left, you can see the relationship between this painted sketch and that piece. So Tiepolo's mature work was really, his early mature work was like from 1726 to 1750. He had a international reputation, and got commissions in Germany and in Spain. So he really got around. One of the things I want you to look at is the beauty of how that paint is applied to this study. There's the brushwork is just so painterly. He allows that brushwork to show. It more or less a century before the Impressionists is a very impressionistic look and feel. Now, the other thing I want you to understand and appreciate about this work is these pieces were not drawn directly from models. They come out of his imagination. So the anatomical stuff that goes on in many of them is all really coming from his memory and his experience as a draftsman. So many of these sketches, as I said, are reference material, conjured out of his fertile imagination, not worked up from models. Some of the sketches can actually be really tiny. Like, I believe this one is about 2 by 8 inches. So again, these loosely painted studies really are a place for him to work out his color harmonies and the directionality of the brushwork and all of that. And when it comes to the finish, frescoes are very different from oil paint. Oil sketches are much more direct than fresco. Fresco needs to be planned out and plotted out, so the finished quality of a fresco is very different from what you get out of an oil painting. But still, he worked out his ideas in this form. Okay, and this is on the top is Gregorio Lazarini's work, and that was his mentor and basically the guide to his apprenticeship. Below, I put in a Titian and a Veronese. Um, there's a through line in this work. One of the things that I wanted to also say is he was one of Titian and Veronese were predecessors, and there's a through line in the work through the old masters into Tiepolo, and then beyond that into Fragonard in France. Tiepolo was one of the most successful Italian painters of the 1700s. And here is nude studies are typically associated with the artist's early works. For such drawings, usually executed in the academy setting, served as anatomical lessons and provided the students with a repertoire of dramatic figure types. Nearly a dozen academy drawings by Tiepolo survive, but it's not known whether they were executed as part of his training under Lazzarini or classes by Piazzetti, whose drawings of nudes are similar, or in sessions organized by Tiepolo himself, because he did have students and he had his own atelier. What is clear is that similar bodies are found in Tiepolo's paintings from the 1710s, for which these drawings served as certain inspiration. So, okay. Tiepolo was arguably the greatest painter of the 18th century, of 18th century Europe, and an outstanding the outstanding first master of the grand manner. His art celebrates the imagination by transposing the world of ancient history and myth and scriptures and legends into a grandiose, even theatrical language. His art, with its genial departures from convention and its brilliant use of costume splendor, celebrates the notion of artistic capriccio, and fantasia. In his hands, the informal sketch was raised to a primary art form worthy of being collected alongside his finished paintings. The oil on the left is a study for his enormous fresco decorations at Würzburg, Germany, which is actually 62 by 115 feet. So you can see this, and the deities, the sun god symbolizing the planets, the allegories of figures around the edges. I don't know. I don't have a diagram of this one to figure out who all these folks are, but it's quite an astonishing feat to pull off something of this scale. And here is in situ. Basically, this is what this thing looks like. Now, it's very ornate. This is the Rococo style. And this is a shot looking up from down in the stairwell. So this is a detail from the center of this piece. It's Apollo, and I believe he's holding up a sculpture of of good fortune or something like that. Let's see. And this is a self-portrait, which is integrated into that the Wurzburg residence. So that's Tiepolo. Okay. All right. I want to spend a minute on this piece because it's a really beautiful, beautiful sketch. It loosely relates to some of the actually this pieces of this appear in different murals and frescoes which he executed. Um, and if you look at this piece, there is one general wash throughout this thing. There's this pen line drawing, and then there's this wash. I I am really not sure what the process was, whether he laid down, because actually, if you look really closely, you can see that there is some pencil line. So he did a very, very general, very light pencil line drawing, and then went in. Now I'm not sure if he went in and did the wash first and then did the pen line, or if he actually did the pen line first and then did the washes. But there's very subtle things going on in this, and one of the remarkable parts is how he could catch the light and just give you that sense of illumination across these figures. And again, this is coming from his imagination. This was not, models seated for him. Okay. And so this is kind of the procedure. He would do a bunch of these drawings, and he would take things and take aspects of those things and put them in there. I don't know if any of you have ever drawn from a figure, but foreshortening is one of the most challenging things that you can do when you're drawing a figure. I always love it because I love the challenge, but and I find it more interesting than a straightforward shot of somebody. But but it many of my students have a hard time getting themselves around that. Again, this loose painterly approach, very vigorous brushwork. Uh, he loved to integrate these kind of exotic robes and things like that into these pieces. And again, um, this is that Domenico Tiepolo drawing that I had shown you before in a smaller version. So you can see the relationship between Giambattista and his son, who was actually using this drawing to elaborate on the composition that his father did. very abstract, really loose and open. Um, you can read things in there, but it takes a little bit of time to just get what's going on here. Okay. Um, so once part of a ceiling decoration at Venice's Palazzo Barbaro, this painting was never intended to be seen head on or at such a close range. The mental leap necessary to reimagine it high overhead, however, replicates Tiepolo's process through drawing and oil sketches that solve the issues of color and distribution, composition, perspective. He and his patrons, he and his patrons' approval. Tiepolo foresaw highly site-specific demands. The trumpet, outreached arm, and foreshortened central figure give a false impression that the ceiling opens to the sky. Tiepolo was adept at allegorizing, allegorizing his patrons through figures include the figures include valor, fame, and glory. Um, so there's a lot of stuff going on in these pieces that have to do with politics and um, the general historic atmosphere of the time and the competitiveness. You know, I don't know that much about that time period, um, though I know that Venice was a city state at that time. Milan was under Viennese um, control at that point. Um, Spain was a great world power, um, with a mighty armada, and as we know, a lot of colonies in the New World. Uh, so there were a lot of forces at play, and a lot of these things are um, allegories that we wouldn't know about now, or maybe a historian of the time would, but I certainly don't. So we're left with the paintings, which is great. And again, we have these putti playing in the clouds. Very, you know, lovely compositional elements. Uh, Very playful. Um, and the shape distribution on the surface is just so lovely. Uh, the asymmetry of these pieces. Okay, and here's another, example of his pieces installed um, and the Baroque style, which is this kind of over the top, ornate stuff. Not to my taste, but hey. Okay. And again, the energy of the drawing, of the line, of the search to articulate this stuff is very, very, there's the dog in there, and there's the folks carving into the tree, and you kind of get all this stuff in a very abstracted calligraphic form. Um, And in many ways, as a contemporary artist, I relate to the drawings a lot more than the completed paintings, although they're admirable technically. Okay. Two men wearing robes and a turban. Again, he took a couple of trips to Spain. He had commissions, I think, in the 1750s. I know that he moved there I believe it was the 1760s, because he had enormous commissions there. Many of Giambattista's head drawings explore the emotive possibilities of the human face through astoundingly minimal means, with no underdrawing, a few flicks of the pen, and a few touches of wash. He could evoke a world of volume, texture, and expression. And the piece on the left is a really kind of uncommon piece for him. It's all done with the brush, with the tip of the brush, rather than with the pen and washes. So it's pretty atypical of his technique and approach. But it reminded me of Rembrandt, um, and the kind of, again, kilographic quality of young woman sleeping. That was one of his wives. Her head resting on her right arm. Uh, it's a brush with brown wash and some white body color mixed in, with parts of the wash touched with the pen in the hair. Um, there's kind of a ruled frame around the outside that I didn't get. Uh, but again, that just rapid ability to get that thing down. Now, my guess is Rembrandt's approach. He may well have been, she may well have been sitting for him. But the young man leaning on a stick, that would be a fast sketch that he would do outdoors. And here is an example of a Rembrandt on the top. Again, relatively small. It's 4 by 9 inches, and this tiny Tiepolo on the bottom, which is 2 by 7 inches. Pen and brown ink with brown wash, touched with white, a pale buff paper retouched with darker brown ink, with the paling on the left. Okay. Beautiful drawings. Okay. So again, we're back to the angels. He's using pen with gray ink and brown ink and things like that. But just getting the dynamics down, this movement, the power of this thing. I talked a lot about figure ground last time that we met, when I was talking about the pots. And again, this business of figure ground, the occupied space, the space that is dark and the space that is light, and the activity in both those forms. if you're looking at it from that point of view, your eye completes the painting. Your eye completes the drawing. Um, and it's part of the energy of the piece that it's not overly developed. Okay. And here we have one of the the Spanish um, murals. Um, this study gives you some sense of the mix of mythology and geopolitical reference embedded in these pieces. Um, I'm not up on the historical forces at play in all of this, but you get that the Spanish monarchy, represented by this figure in the dead center. If you see number 4 over here, it says Spanish monarchy, and dead center is the center of the universe is the Spanish monarchy. Uh, so it's really, there are, just as with Chinese paintings, there are always these political and uh, contemporaneous um, uh, kind of sidebars to these paintings. But again, beautifully painted, harmonic. The use of lights and darks, the color harmonies. Um, he was a wonderful colorist. And I just found this diagram really a lot of fun. I got this it's from the Met, the pieces in the Met. Okay, and here's one more of the ceilings from Spain. Um, I don't have the dimensions on this one, but you get the idea. Okay, and now we're going to move on to the Punchinella. And this is a whole other aspect, and this is sort of a sideline. He did a lot of etchings and things like that also, along with these drawings. I don't have any of those included here, but although Tiepolo's earliest Punchinella drawings relate to the excesses of Carnival, he also devised episodes that showed the clown engaged in ordinary life, as in this scene of courtship. Amusingly, we are unable to tell whether Puncinella's lady is herself a Punchinella or whether the clown courts a beauty. And again, these are, uh, he and his son were both fascinated by the Punchinella and that whole um, um, comedic um, satire. And here is a group of Punchinellas, and this one was done by Giambattista. Um, while the early history of these works is unknown, these drawings and paintings may have been an introductory foray into the subject, providing both Giambattista and Domenico an inspiration for the comic and mock heroic images that followed. So this is fairly early. This is 1730, 1735. So these are Domenico's pieces. He did well over 100 of these Punchinello um, pieces, and you know, one of the things is gluttony and lust and um, kind of lunacy. Um, it just gave them free reign to poke fun at human frailty. Uh, this Punchinello riding on an ass in procession of his fellows. And on the end of that little fork that he's holding up in the air is a gnocchi. Um, if you know the gnocchi, the Italian pasta, uh, very celebrated with the Punchinello. And here we have a set of of um, the Punchinella. This is the drunken Punchinella lying down. That's Giambattista, um, and you know the other two that are here are Domenico. Um, and if you look at the one on the top in the center, um, you see that mound sticking up. So the implication is that Punchinella ate himself to death. Um, you know, you see the kind of um, satirical aspect of these, and they just love to do them. And up in the left hand corner, I've got a Goya, and he would have very well known um, the Tiepolo's work on these, and they're really kind of contemporaneous um, with Domenico. Dark, funny, um, beautifully drawn. I mean, you know, the perspectival stuff and all that is all right on the money. Um, and again, you can see, you know, how the the technique that his father developed influenced Domenico. Very funny, you know, really. Uh, there, these actually, I believe he did a whole series of etchings from these too, which were they were very popular. He also executed, was fairly successful, executed very large scale frescoes on his own. Um, Lorenzo was also a successful painter, his other brother, and but not included in this group in this particular show. They focus more on the Punchinello series and the developmental drawings and oil sketches of Giambattista. Um, but it's a very, you know, it's just wonderful work. I've always loved those drawings. I never really appreciated his paintings quite as Giambattista's paintings quite as much, but you know, the oil sketches are quite lovely, and well worth a trip to the Morgan. Um, and there's actually going to be a gallery talk on December 15th at 5:30. Um, you know, so that might be something, you know, worth putting on your note card to get to. On also on the 15th, I'm going to be doing a talk on Robert Motherwell. Uh, Slightly different place from this and slightly different era, but nonetheless a kind of grand um, uh, scale and power. So okay, that's our
Okay.
story.
Okay, Larry, thank you. If you could stay on for a minute, Larry, that'd be
Sure.
great.
Yep.
Well, thank you all for coming. I hope you all had a good Thanksgiving and are looking forward to the upcoming holidays. So, and just, I told you about two programs coming up. I hope you will all attend the in-person programs. If not, if I don't see you then, I'll see you again in 2 weeks. Bye-bye.